Today is the 7th and last day of the February 1986 7-day retreat. We will read some selections from Wang Po, who was a Chinese Zen teacher who lived about 1,000 years ago. Since people a few times have asked me whether Wang Po was my authority, I want to state that this is not so. It is easy on the last day not to have to think of a topic to talk about and to keep the mind on that topic, but to read sections and comment on them if necessary. The first selection for today is one I've never read, because it somehow never seemed consistent with the teaching of Wang Po. It was a very radical way and radical words to wipe away all pious words, practices, doctrines. This is about prostration. Wang Po is supposed to have had a bump on his head, and in one Zen lineage it was said that this bump resulted from the frequency of his prostrations. But I also read another account where it was not explained this way, but it said his bump was a visible sign of his wisdom. But the great way is not difficult for those who do not pick or choose. Actually, this particular incident was quoted not infrequently to me when I left the tradition. Well, one can imagine for what reasons. I'll read it first. You don't even know what I'm talking about. Our master once attended an assembly at the bureau of the Imperial Salt Commissioners. At which the Emperor Taichung was also present as a Sramanera. I'm reading from Zen Teaching of Wang Po, translated by John Blofeld, and his footnote says, here probably meaning a layman who had taken 10 precepts instead of the normal 5, the emperor. The Sramanera noticed our master enter the hall of worship and make a triple prostration to the Buddha, whereupon he asked, if we are to seek nothing from the Buddha, Dharma or Sangha, what does your reverence seek by such prostrations? Though I seek not from the Buddha, replied our master, or from the Dharma, or from the Sangha, it is my custom to show respect in this way. But what purpose does it serve? Insisted the Sramanera, whereupon he suddenly received a slap. Oh, he exclaimed, how uncouth you are. What is this? Cried the master. Imagine making a distinction between refined and uncouth. So saying, he administered another slap, causing the Sramanera to betake himself elsewhere. This could call up a host of comments, this incident, and questions. Actually, one of the reasons it came to mind that not too long ago someone visited here from a Soto Zen center. Not that he was recently at it, but he had sat with a Soto group and questioned why we don't bow to the cushions, which is what he had learned to do, and he had, even though, as he said in the beginning, he found that a little bit a strange custom, he found that it really did something for him. It made him pay attention to the cushion and feel an intrinsic respect for it. And he said, here, people just stomp into the hall and may even kick a cushion. And I don't feel this respect here that I did at the other place. Asking him whether he really saw that somebody kicked a cushion, he said, well, I actually didn't see that. And he admitted that it was a little exaggeration of his feelings, which is interesting, again, in terms of how the mind works. If one doesn't feel the respect is given, then the opposite is imagined, that one disrespects it and kicks it. So it behooves all of us to observe very carefully and not just go by what we think happens if something else doesn't happen, not to just immediately shift to the opposite. And we discussed together at great length this whole thing of respect, what respect really is, whether it can be learned, what it means. Most of us have had this training of bowing. We didn't bow to cushions, we bowed to each other and to the altar, to the Buddha, to the teacher. And because we're so ruled by language, we may automatically assume that therefore we're becoming respectful. And it may indeed be that if one bows to a cushion, bends down, one sees the thing. Or one may not. It may become a very mechanical affair. Bowing does not guarantee seeing. Even though the word respect, interestingly enough, has that word seeing in it. Like spectacles mean something to see with. There is that word in the word respect. But does it really mean that if we make an outward show of respect, that we really see him or that to which we bow? And if that is truthfully seen, without any seer, because true seeing is without a seer, without the division of him or her who does the seeing. When that division doesn't exist, does the natural respect, I'm using that word because that's what we're talking about right now, the natural respect that comes up, does that need to be expressed at all? We were told that this is an urge of human nature to express its feelings, express its gratitude. But like so many things one is told and hears over and over and learns and repeats, one may never have thought it through or looked at it for oneself, free from influence. I remember once being invited to the Soto Center to give a talk. And before the talk, the abbot was going to light some incense that was going to be offered at the altar. And he had a little 2-year-old son who got very excited when the matches came out. And he wanted to light that incense. Daddy, 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 can I light it? And he said, yes, you can light it. And he held him up to the bowl. And he said, but first you bow. And dutifully, the little 2-year-old put his hands together and put his head down. And then he grabbed for the match and lit the incense. So here was a tiny little new bit of life being conditioned. Whether this incident took place or not, we don't know. Somebody may have stuck it in there to counteract Wang Po's radicalism. Because as we will see from the next selection we'll read, there are so many versions of each of these stories that one really wonders who really said what. Everybody who did a new compilation changed words and even whole meanings of these anecdotes and stories. But supposing it did take place, and the emperor asking, why are you doing that? And the answer, this is how I show my respect. And then, remember what he said. But what purpose does it serve? And a slap. This could be interpreted in many different ways by the emperor. Did it just wipe away all thought, all questioning, all discrimination? Particularly the second slap, when he says, well, how uncouth it is, and Wang Po says, why do you discriminate between refined and uncouth? Wham! Does that wipe away discrimination? Does it establish the authority of the teacher? One can ask whether it discriminates between who is to be respected and who not. An emperor usually is not slapped. An emperor usually is bowed to. So is there respect due in one place but not in another? One assumes that Wang Po was such a famous teacher, knew what he was doing, that this whack was to stop all further thinking, questioning. But Wang Po was so outspoken against all methods. Was that a method? And why not question something? Why not question why one bows to a Buddha figure? What's wrong with that? Is it that we're always tied up someplace where we don't want to look, which we think is the right thing to do, and that does not call for any questioning? And wherever we're tied up, we have a blind spot. Like with the eye, where the optic nerve enters the retina, there's a blind spot. At that spot of tie-up with the brain, the retina cannot see. One wonders if one uses the imagination. What if the Buddha himself had appeared and had asked Wang Po, why do you bow to that thing up there? After I said, don't make any statues of myself after my death. Is respect and love at all learnable and teachable? Trainable, practicable? One can practice it, but is that really respect and love? At that point with this little boy, what he wanted to do was strike a match and light an incense. That's what he wanted to do. And it almost seemed as though this is what he had to pay for doing that. Not that he minded it, he had done it before. It was something that his father expected of him and that his father did too. And we have a tremendous imitative streak in us. But imitation is not respect. As long as the self is there wanting to express itself in one form or another, can there be the clarity of seeing, the wholeness of seeing? The self which is steeped in tradition of one kind or another. When the master had taken his place in the assembly hall, he began, "You people are just like drunkards. I don't know how you manage to keep on your feet in such a sodden condition. Why, everyone will die laughing at you. It all seems so easy, so why do we have to live to see a day like this?" This kind of exclamation is differently put in another version where it says, Wang Po instructing the assembly said, "You are all mash eaters." Or in another translation it says, "Dredges, you're all eating dredges." Which is what's left over when all the juice and nutrients and minerals and vitamins are out of the food or the grapes, then what's left is dredges, leftover, dead stuff. However you go about traveling on pilgrimages, what is your position today? However much you go from one place to another on pilgrimages, what is your position today? Then he goes on, can't you understand that in the whole empire of Tang, of China, there are no teachers skilled in Chan or in Zen? Why do you go around from one place to another when there are, in the whole empire of China, there are no teachers of Chan? Chan, not that word here, not standing for a school of Buddhism, but for, that word is from the Sanskrit word dhyana and means meditation or meditative awareness. At this point, one of the monks present asked, "How can you say that? At this very moment, as all can see, we are sitting face to face with one who has appeared in the world to be a teacher of monks and a leader of men." "Please note that I did not say there is no Zen," answered our master. "I merely pointed out that there are no teachers." I think we talked amply about this whole matter of teaching in the first talk. That in this work there is nothing to teach, nothing to give and nothing to receive. It's not a matter of accumulating knowledge, but of seeing for oneself. Maybe of help, someone points out something. It may be easier to see, but it is no guarantee that seeing will take place. Just because things are pointed out over and over again. Yet it is a strange and unexplainable thing that if the intellect has grasped something, understood something, heard something, one may become aware of things that one has taken totally for granted. One may watch more carefully and indeed come upon habits and conditionings that one would have never otherwise questioned. But seeing or awareness cannot be bestowed by anyone. And there is no receiver of it either. No doer of it. Our master said, "Cast out the dross acquired through heterogeneous learning. Above all, avoid seeking for anything objective or permitting any sort of attachment. Having listened to the profoundest doctrines, behave as though a light breeze had caressed your ears. A gust had passed away in the blink of an eye. By no means attempt to follow such doctrines. To act in accordance with these injunctions is to achieve profundity." want to mention that many words and paragraphs and lines are left out here in this reading. If ever you should allow yourselves to believe in the more than purely transitory existence of phenomena, you will have fallen into a grave error. But if, on the contrary, you take the intrinsic voidness of phenomena to imply mere emptiness, then you have fallen into another error. How is it possible that Gautama Buddha could have originated the present conceptions of enlightenment? But as doctrines are still commonly taught, people become involved in the duality of longing for light and eschewing darkness. In their anxiety to seek enlightenment on the one hand, and to escape from the passions and ignorance of corporal existence on the other, they conceive of an enlightened Buddha and unenlightened sentient beings as separate entities. Let me assure you again that the Buddha dwells not in light nor sentient beings in darkness, for the truth allows no such distinctions. The Buddha is not mighty nor sentient beings feeble, for truth allows no such distinctions. The Buddha is not enlightened nor sentient beings ignorant, for the truth allows no such distinctions. It is all because you take it upon yourself to talk of explaining Zen. As soon as the mouth is opened, all evils spring forth. People either neglect the root and speak of the branches, or neglect the reality of the illusory world and speak only of enlightenment, or else they chatter of cosmic activities leading to transformations while neglecting the substance from which they spring. Indeed, there is never any profit in discussion. When a sudden flash of thought occurs in your mind, and you see it for a dream or an illusion, then you can enter into the state reached by the Buddhas of the past. Not that the Buddhas of the past really exist, or that the Buddhas of the future have not yet come into existence. Above all, have no longing to become a future Buddha. Your sole concern should be, as thought succeeds thought, to avoid clinging to any of them. Nor may you entertain the least ambition to be a Buddha here and now. Even if a Buddha arises, do not think of him as enlightened or deluded, good or evil. Hasten to rid yourself of any desire to cling to him. Cut him off in the twinkling of an eye. On no account seek to hold him fast, for 1,000 locks could not stay him, nor 100,000 feet of rope bind him. This being so, valiant strive to banish and annihilate him. But bow to him every once in a while. I will now make luminously clear how to set about being rid of that Buddha. Consider the sunlight. You may say it is near, yet if you follow it from world to world, you will never catch it in your hands. Then you may describe it as far away, and lo, you will see it just before your eyes. Follow it, and behold, it escapes you. Run from it, and it follows you close. You can neither possess it nor have done with it. From this example you can understand how it is with the true nature of all things, and henceforth there will be no need to grieve or worry about such things. Now beware of going on to say that my recommendation to cut off the Buddha was profane, or that my comparing him to the sunshine was pious, as though I had wavered from one extreme to the other. Followers of the other sects would then agree with you, but our Zen sect will not admit either the profanity of the first nor the pious quality of the second. Thus, all the visible universe is the Buddha. Buddha here, this word is One of the Sanskrit translations is truth, reality, the absolute. Thus all the visible universe is the Buddha, so are all sounds. Hold fast to one principle and all the others are identical. On seeing one thing, you see all. On perceiving any individual's mind, you are perceiving all mind. Obtain a glimpse of one way, and all ways are embraced in your vision, for there is nowhere at all which is devoid of the way. When your glance falls upon a grain of dust, what you see is identical with all the vast world systems with their great rivers and mighty hills. To gaze upon a drop of water is to behold the nature of all the waters of the universe. Moreover, in thus contemplating the totality of phenomena, you are contemplating the totality of mind. Or, this contemplation is the totality of mind. There's no one doing the contemplating. This is again the difficulty of language. All these phenomena are intrinsically void, and yet this mind with which they are identical is no mere nothingness. By this I mean that it does exist, but in a way too marvelous for us to comprehend. So this true void does in some marvelous way exist. Later he says, all this talk of Bodhi, Nirvana, the Absolute, the Buddha nature, Mahayana, Theravada, Bodhisattvas, and so on, is like taking autumn leaves for gold. To use the symbol of the closed fist, when it is opened, all beings, both gods and men, will perceive there is not a single thing inside. Therefore it is written, there's never been a single thing, so where is the defiling dust to cling? Moreover, when the moment of understanding comes, do not think in terms of understanding, or not understanding. For none of these is something to be grasped. This truth, or this thusness when grasped, is grasped, but he who grasps it is no more conscious of having done so than someone ignorant of it is conscious of his failure. This thusness, until now so few people have come to understand it. So that it is said, so that it is written, in this world how few are there who drop their egos. As for those people who seek to grasp it through the application of some particular principle, or by creating a special environment, or through some scripture or doctrine, or age or time or name or word, or through their six senses, how do they differ from wooden dolls? Refrain from seeking Buddhahood, since any search is doomed to failure. Some madman shrieking from the mountaintop on hearing the echo far below may go to seek it in the valley. But oh, how vain his search! Once in the valley he shrieks again, and straightway climbs to seek among the mountains. Why, he may spend 1,000 rebirths or 10,000 eons searching for the source of those sounds by following their echoes. Far better that you make no sound, for then there will be no echo. No knowing, no sound, no track, no trace. What I brought along too is a bulletin from the Krishnamurti Foundation of America. It's number 50, autumn-winter 84. And I will read one question and Krishnamurti's answer. Few things left out. And the questioner asks, you say liberation is not an individual matter, but concerns humanity as a whole. You say liberation is not an individual matter, but concerns humanity as a whole. Yet, liberating insight has been the unique achievement of the individuals like the Buddha and the Christ, and perhaps yourself. How can it be a matter for the whole of humanity? And Krishnamurti's answer, first of all, let's leave the Buddha, the Christ, and the speaker out of it. They are not important. Do you know what disciples do? Disciples destroy the teacher. They invent a lot of theories, a lot of nonsense, write about them. They are the interpreters. And you know what takes place then. So let's look at the question very carefully, if we can liberate ourselves from these figures. First, is insight, which is the liberating factor, is insight an achievement? Is it granted or given only to the few? Is it something that demands an utterly unselfish life? Is it something that is not personal? To go into this, one must go still deeper to realize that the world is me and I am the world. That is a fact for me, for the speaker. The speaker is not separate from the world, and the world is not different from him. We have already gone into this sufficiently. Human consciousness with all its content of belief, experience, knowledge, memory, fear, pleasure, suffering, anxiety, loneliness, despair, and all the pain of the world is common to all mankind. This is so. It is common to us whether we live 1,000,000 miles away or very close. So you are the world psychologically, and the world is you. Now, is liberation, illumination, or that enlightenment reserved only for the extraordinary few? Or if you had that tremendous insight into the wholeness of life, would your consciousness be totally different? Naturally it would, because that liberating insight frees you from all the content of that consciousness. The pain, the anxiety, the loneliness, sorrow, depression, all that is wiped out. It is a fact if you do it, and it can be done. And it is not reserved for the few. But we human beings are not persistent. We do not apply ourselves continuously. We are slack. We do this one day and we're weary of it the next. We slack off. So the ball is never in our court. It is always in other people's courts. But if we are capable of maintaining attention, not by will, but by perception, by seeing the fact and remaining with the fact without any movement away from it, then the fact undergoes a radical change. You can see this if you do it. If you as a human being recognize that you are the whole of humanity and that therefore you are extraordinarily responsible without any feeling of guilt, then your consciousness undergoes a change, obviously. That is the liberating factor of insight. If you have that liberating factor of insight, and you have transformed your consciousness, you're bringing a factor of something new into the whole consciousness of humanity. Do you understand? I don't know whether you have read about a recent experiment they have been doing with rats. They put some rats in a tank of water with two outlets, one dark and the other with a light. When the rat climbs up the ramp to the light hatch, expecting to escape it, it gets an electric shock, and after several attempts it comes down the ramp and climbs up to the dark outlet and escapes. Generally, the father and mother rat took some time to discover this, but their children learned much quicker. After only a few attempts, the youngest rats make their escape through the black hatch. They have been carrying out these experiments both in England and Australia, and perhaps in some parts of America. The scientists were not in communication with each other, but the findings were the same, though the rats in Australia were quicker in choosing the black hatch. The rats in England took more time. But their children and grandchildren were much quicker. 2 attempts at the electric shock hatch and they were out through the black one. So the scientists have discovered there is a group consciousness. You understand? This group consciousness exists. And therefore, when there's one rat that learns much quicker, that quickness is transferred to the whole rat consciousness. Do you grasp it? We have been talking about this for years. Only the rats have illuminated our minds. Very interesting. Look how we ourselves operate. We don't see something true immediately. It takes time. Then we learn and genetically we transform. We are saying that if you transform yourself through the liberation of insight, you are communicating it to the whole consciousness of man. This happens. The great rulers of the world or the great killers of the world have affected the human mind. Attila, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Hitler, and on the other side Buddha and others. They have all affected the human mind, the human consciousness. But if we actually daily live with this intelligence, the insight which liberates, then we're bringing to the whole of the consciousness of man a totally different value, a different movement which is not based on knowledge. It is based on insight and intelligence and love. We will end here for today.